You think you're lazy because the dishes are still in the sink, because the messages sit unanswered, because you haven't been productive in days, maybe weeks. You wake up tired, you go to sleep tired, and somewhere in between, you scroll, you zone out, you exist, barely, and that voice in your head says, you're just not trying hard enough. But what if that voice is wrong? What if you're not lazy? What if you're burnt out? Burnout doesn't always look like breaking down in tears. Sometimes it's silence. It's sleeping too much or not at all. It's starting tasks you don't finish. It's being overwhelmed by the smallest things. It's looking at your to-do list and feeling your chest tighten. It's guilt, heavy and constant. Guilt for resting, for avoiding, for wasting time. Carl Jung once said, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." But here's the problem. You didn't pass through fire. You were left in it. Long enough that your fire became smoke. Long enough that exhaustion became your baseline. You weren't always like this. There was a version of you that was curious, excited, driven. You still remember them, faintly, like a dream. But that version of you has been buried under pressure, perfectionism, over-responsibility, under the constant demand to perform, even when your tank is empty. You think burnout happens to weak people? Number burnout happens to the strongest ones, the ones who carry everything, the ones who don't say no, the ones who show up, even when they're falling apart. So let's call it what it is. This isn't laziness. This is nervous system collapse. You're not unmotivated. You're depleted. You're not weak. You're overloaded. And no amount of hustle mindset content is going to fix what rest, repair, and reconnection should have done a long time ago. But the world doesn't reward rest. It rewards noise, motion, output. So you force yourself to keep going, and when you can't, you blame yourself. As if running on fumes is a moral failure. It's not. It's a survival response. And before you can rebuild, you have to stop calling your symptoms personality flaws. You don't just wake up one day burnt out. It builds, quietly, day after day, expectation after expectation, 1,000 small yes is you never meant, 100 moments you bit your tongue, all the times you smiled when you wanted to cry, all the energy spent being what others needed, not what you are. Burnout is not about work, it's about weight. The weight of unprocessed emotions, the weight of being responsible for too much, too long, the weight of pretending you're okay. Have you noticed how even the smallest task now feels massive? How even rest doesn't feel restful anymore? It's because you're not just tired, you're carrying a mental load no one sees. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate." So let's make this conscious. This exhaustion, it's not because you didn't do enough. It's because you've done too much, for too long, without support. You've been the strong one, the dependable one, the one who holds it together when no one else can. But who holds you? Burnout isn't weakness. It's a message. It's your body saying, "I can't carry this anymore." It's your soul saying, "This isn't who I am." It's your mind begging you to stop performing survival and start living again. But here's the cruel irony. You're so used to functioning under stress, you don't even recognize peace anymore. Stillness feels like guilt. Quiet feels like failure. Rest feels unsafe. So you keep going, keep pushing, keep collapsing in private and showing up in public. This is what we do when our value is tied to performance. We perform, even when it's killing us. The real problem: you've been praised for it. You've been applauded for being the one who gets things done. You've been rewarded for ignoring your limits. But that praise was poison, because now stopping feels like failure. Now saying "I need help" feels like weakness. It's not. It's human. And it might just be the first honest thing you've said in years. You don't rest anymore. You just pause between tasks. Every quiet moment feels like a countdown to the next thing you should be doing. And when there's nothing urgent on your plate, you feel uneasy, anxious, like you're failing at something somehow. Because somewhere along the line, your worth became tied to what you produce. How much, how fast, how constantly. You weren't born like this. You were trained to feel shame when you're not achieving, trained to measure your value in output, trained to believe that rest is earned, not inherent. But what if that belief is killing you? Carl Jung warned us, the greatest burden a child must bear is the UN-lived life of the parents. And maybe this urgency in you, this relentless pressure to keep going, didn't start with you. Maybe you inherited it from parents who never got to slow down, from a culture that glorifies burnout and sells it as ambition, from systems that told you productivity equals purpose. And so now, you punish yourself with motion. When you're tired, you overcompensate. When you're anxious, you overwork. And when you're breaking, you just tell yourself to push through. Because being tired isn't enough to justify stopping anymore. You need to be falling apart before you give yourself permission to pause. But listen to me. If your rest requires your body to collapse, that's not rest, that's recovery. And recovery is never chosen, it's forced. So what if, just once, you stopped before it got that far? What if you didn't wait until your body said enough? What if you believed you were worthy of stillness without first having to suffer for it? The truth is, the system doesn't care if you break, as long as you keep showing up. But you should. You should care if you're becoming a machine, efficient, useful, but lifeless inside. Productivity without peace is just performance, and no trophy is worth losing your soul. You're not lazy. You're overcorrecting for a world that only sees your value when you're exhausted. But exhaustion isn't a badge of honor. It's a warning sign. It's your body screaming for you to come home. If this video spoke to a part of you that no one else sees, then maybe this is where you finally stop pretending. Hit subscribe, not because you're told to, but because you're ready to hear the things most people run from. Welcome back to yourself. Burnout doesn't just steal your energy, it steals your reflection. You don't recognize yourself anymore. You can't remember the last time you laughed without guilt, the last time you woke up excited, the last time rest didn't feel like failure. But it's not just tiredness. Tiredness heals with sleep. This question mark. This is something else. This is grief. Grief for all the time you spent proving yourself to people who never saw you. Grief for the younger version of you who thought if you just tried hard enough, you'd finally feel worthy. Carl Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And this is why you've been running, not from effort, not from discipline, but from yourself. Because deep down, when you stop performing, what's left? What if there's nothing impressive there? What if you're just average? What if the stillness proves what you've always feared, that without your output, no one cares? These are the silent beliefs that burnout hides. It's not just fatigue, it's shame. It's the shame of being human in a system that only rewards machines. It's the shame of slowing down when everyone else is sprinting. It's the shame of needing help and not knowing how to ask. And under the shame, rage. The kind of rage that comes from always being the strong one. From holding space for others while no one holds space for you. From being labeled resilient as an excuse to ignore your pain. You don't just want a break. You want to be seen, heard, held, without having to earn it. But here's the cruel part. You don't even believe you deserve that anymore. That's what burnout does. It disconnects you from your needs, then makes you feel guilty for even having them. cancel plans because you're too tired, but the truth is, you can't bear to perform happiness one more time. You isolate, not for peace, but because small talk feels like screaming underwater. You say, "I'm fine," so no one asks questions you don't have the strength to answer. This isn't laziness. This is a nervous system in survival mode. This is your soul collapsing from emotional debt. This is your mind begging for mercy in the only language it knows: withdrawal. And if you ignore that plea long enough, it turns into silence. And silence, if you're not careful, becomes numbness. And that's not life. That's just enduring. There comes a moment in every collapse where you realize something terrifying. You've survived, not thrived, not healed, just endured. Quietly, invisibly. You've stayed alive in a body that's been screaming for rest, in a mind that hasn't known stillness in years. You start to notice little things, like how a full night of sleep doesn't make you feel rested, like how even when everything is fine, something still aches, like how joy feels foreign, like a language you used to speak but forgot. This is where the return begins, not with fireworks, not with motivation, with emptiness. With sitting in that emptiness long enough to realize you can't keep living like this. Carl Jung believed that every transformation begins in the underworld, that true change isn't born from getting better. It's born from finally looking at the part of you you've been avoiding. So you start small. You stop trying to force productivity. You stop punishing yourself for resting. You give yourself permission to do nothing and not feel guilty. And that alone feels radical. You start noticing your body again, not just when it's in pain or performing, but in its stillness. You begin to ask, what do I actually need right now? Not what others need from you, not what the world demands, but you. The answers don't come quickly. At first, there's just silence, then maybe sadness, grief for all the years you betrayed your limits, anger for all the ways you pushed through when you should have paused. But underneath all that, space to rebuild. Burnout didn't just destroy your energy, it shattered your trust in yourself. So you begin to rebuild it, one boundary at a time, one canceled plan you don't feel bad about, 1 hour of rest that doesn't end in overcompensation, one honest conversation where you finally say, to find pride in recovery, not performance. And slowly, you remember that peace doesn't mean everything's fixed. It means you're no longer running from yourself. You may still feel tired, but now it's a different kind of tired. It's the tired that comes after choosing yourself, not because you had to, but because for once, you believed you were worth it. People around you might not notice the change at first. You're still quiet, still kind, still functional. But now there's something different in your silence, a new kind of presence, one that says, I will no longer abandon myself to be accepted. I will no longer shrink to fit someone else's comfort. I'm not here to be productive. I'm here to be whole. And that is how the return begins, not with answers, but with a new kind of question. What if I lived like I was enough, even now? There won't be a dramatic shift, no spotlight, no standing ovation, no perfect morning when everything clicks. Your healing won't be loud. It will begin silently, in the small pauses you used to rush through, in the moments you finally choose yourself without apologizing. You'll notice it in the way you cancel plans without making excuses, in the way you say no without guilt, I can't without explanation, and I need space without panic. It will feel wrong at first. It will feel like failure, because your nervous system has been wired to associate stillness with danger, with judgment, with being left behind. But pause anyway, and in that pause, you'll find something strange. You're still here. You're still breathing, and nothing collapsed. Carl Jung said, The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who you've trained yourself to be, not the version of you that others needed, not the performer, the achiever, the fixer. You, the one under the performance, the one who's been whispering for years under the noise. Please, slow down. I'm still in here. You don't need to earn rest. You don't need to explain why you're tired. You don't need a reason to reclaim your time, your focus, your energy. You just need to decide, enough. Enough pretending you're fine. Enough measuring your worth and output. Enough confusing exhaustion for excellence. Enough silencing yourself so others stay comfortable. Let people misunderstand you. Let them gossip, roll their eyes, call you selfish. Let them think you're being dramatic for drawing a line they used to cross freely. That's not your burden anymore. You're not a therapist in disguise. You're not a support system for people who drain you. You're not a machine built to serve. You're a human being, tired, layered, holy, and worthy. Even in your mess, even when you're not useful, even when you do nothing. The systems you were raised in, they taught you that burnout is noble, that suffering is strength, that productivity is morality. But look around. Does that look like wholeness? Do you really want to live like your peace must always be paid for? Because real peace doesn't cost you your soul. Real peace doesn't require self-abandonment. It arrives when you stop bargaining for rest and finally take it. This is your quiet revolution, not quitting everything, not disappearing, just choosing to stop betraying yourself. One boundary, one breath at a time. No one will clap for it. And that's the point. You're not doing this for applause. You're doing it because you're finally done proving your worth. You've done enough. You are enough. Now, be